The day started like any other Saturday. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and I was looking forward to a quiet afternoon. My wife Sarah had declared it Spring Cleaning Day, a phrase that always sent a shiver down my spine. Not because I disliked cleaning, but because her definition of cleaning often involved purging. Relentless, merciless purging. Our garage, my sanctuary, my fortress of solitude, filled with dusty boxes of dreams, was her primary task. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the familiar squeak of the garage door opening. A wave of dread washed over me. I'd spent years accumulating my collection, a treasure trove of comic books that dated back to my childhood. Each issue was a memory, a piece of my history. Every long box was carefully labeled, organized by title and issue number, some even bagged and boarded, protected like precious artifacts. I had explained their value to Sarah countless times, not just the sentimental value, but the very real, tangible monetary worth. She'd always just nodded, a polite smile on her face, and then changed the subject. I told myself she understood. I told myself she respected my passion. I was a fool. I heard the rumbling of the garbage truck from down the street, an ominous growl that seemed to echo my rising panic. I walked to the garage, coffee forgotten, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum solo. The garage door was fully open, revealing the bright morning light, and then I saw it. Or rather, what I didn't see, my long boxes, dozens of them, stacked neatly against the far wall. They usually formed a formidable barrier, a wall of pop culture history. Now there was just an empty space, a gaping, silent void, where my life's work used to be. My breath caught in my throat. I stood there, frozen, staring at the concrete floor. No boxes, no comics. Just the faint smell of dust and despair. "Oh, hey honey." Sarah's cheerful voice cut through the silence, making me jump. She emerged from behind the lawnmower, wiping her hands on an old rag, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. "Look how much space I cleared." It was so cluttered in here, all those old boxes, just taking up space. I mean seriously, what were you even going to do with all those dusty old comics? The words hit me like a physical blow. Dusty old comics. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth would shatter. "Sarah," I managed, my voice a strangled whisper. "Where are they? Where are my comic boxes?" She shrugged, a casual gesture that shredded my soul. "Oh, those." I finally got rid of them. The garbage truck just picked them up. You should have seen how many bags I filled. It took me all morning, but it's done. Now we have room for actual useful things, like a new shelving unit for the tools, or maybe even a small home gym. She beamed, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine, a chilling premonition of disaster. No, she couldn't have. Not all of them, not the entire collection. "You threw them out?" I asked, my voice rising, barely recognizable as my own. "You threw out all my comics? Are you serious?" Her smile faltered slightly. "Well, yes. I told you I was going to declutter the garage. You never looked at them. They just sat there collecting dust. And frankly, they were starting to smell musty. I thought you'd be happy. It's so much cleaner now." She gestured around the empty space, proud of her destructive efficiency. My mind raced. The Green Lantern number 76, my prized possession, bought for a pittance years ago, now worth a small fortune. The early Spider-Man issues, the complete run of Sandman, the rare variant covers I'd hunted down at conventions. Each one a piece of my heart. Each one an investment. An investment I had meticulously documented, valued, and sometimes even had appraised. "Sarah," I said, my voice dangerously low, each word laced with a desperate plea for her to understand. Those weren't just old comics. That was my collection, my entire collection. Some of those were incredibly valuable. She scoffed, a dismissive sound that drove a knife through my chest. Valuable? Honey, they were old paperbacks, maybe a few dollars if that. Stop being dramatic. We can always get more comics if you really want them. Here's a comic shop downtown, isn't there? That was it. The final blow. Her complete, utter lack of understanding. Her casual dismissal of something I had poured my life into. My vision blurred. I felt a wave of nausea. I stumbled forward, past her, and sprinted out of the garage, down the driveway, my eyes scanning the street front. The garbage truck was already 2 blocks away, its metallic jaws grinding, chewing up everything in its path, including my past, my present, and a significant chunk of my future. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that it was too late. My breath hitched. I felt a scream tearing through my throat, a guttural roar of pure agony and disbelief. It wasn't just a collection, it was a lifeline. It was my retirement plan. It was over $100,000. Gone. Just like that. Thrown away by my wife. My wife. The woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with, had just destroyed mine. The shocking truth hit me with the force of a freight train. My junk comic collection, the one she'd always joked about, the one she'd finally cleaned up, was now nothing but landfill. And with it, a part of me died. The world went silent around me. The birds stopped chirping. The distant rumble of the garbage truck faded into an irrelevant hum. All I could hear was the frantic pounding of my own heart and the echo of Sarah's cheerful, oblivious voice. Dusty old comics, taking up space. So much cleaner now. Each phrase was a hammer blow against my soul. I spun around, facing her. She was still standing there, hands on her hips, a small, proud smile on her face, oblivious to the catastrophe she had unleashed. Her eyes, usually so warm and kind, now seemed cold and unfeeling, completely devoid of empathy for the devastation she had wrought. "How could you?" I whispered, my voice raw, barely audible. "How could you do this, Sarah?" Her smile faltered again, replaced by a defensive frown. "Do what, Mark?" "I cleaned the garage. We talked about this. It was a mess. You never went through those boxes. They were just sitting there, literally rotting." "Rotting?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "They were in climate-controlled bags and boxes. I spent years carefully preserving them. They weren't rotting, Sarah. They were investments." "Investments?" She crossed her arms, her stance growing more defiant. "You call old comic books investments? Come on, Mark. Be serious. No one pays good money for those things. They're just paper. Childhood toys." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about the comics. This was about a fundamental difference in how we viewed the world, how we valued things, how we respected each other's passions. This was about her complete and utter disregard for something that was profoundly important to me. "Sarah," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage, I told you multiple times. I showed you articles, I showed you auction results. That collection was appraised last year at over $100,000. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed in disbelief. $100,000. Don't be ridiculous, Mark. You are exaggerating. You always exaggerate about your comics. You just want an excuse to keep all that clutter. I am not exaggerating. I yelled, my voice finally breaking. Green Lantern 76. First appearance of Jon Stewart. Graded. That one comic alone was worth $20,000. Do you understand what you just did? You threw out our savings. You threw out our down payment for a house. You threw out our future. Her face paled. For the first time, a flicker of something other than defensiveness crossed her features. It looked like dawning horror, but it was quickly replaced by indignation. Oh, so now it's my fault. You should have put them in a safe. You should have kept them somewhere safe if they were so valuable. Don't you think that's on you? Why would you leave something so valuable in a dusty old garage for me to accidentally throw away? Accidentally? I stared at her, utterly bewildered. You deliberately, intentionally, without asking me, took my boxes and threw them in the trash. You knew they were important to me. You knew I spent years building that collection. How could you just assume they were worthless junk? 'Cause they looked like junk, she retorted, her voice rising now, matching my intensity. They were just old boxes, you never even looked at them. You said you were going to sort them, sell some, but you never did. They just sat there, year after year, taking up space, gathering dust, making the garage smell like old paper. I thought I was doing you a favor. I thought I was helping us. Helping us. I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. You just destroyed us, Sarah. You just took a sledgehammer to our financial security and my entire identity. I felt tears welling in my eyes, hot and stinging, not just from the loss of the comics, but from the realization that the woman I married could be so blind, so callous, so utterly disrespectful of my deepest passion. She threw her hands up in exasperation. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Mark. It's just comics. We can earn more money. It's not the end of the world. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? It's just stuff. It's not just stuff. I roared, my voice raw with anguish. It was my legacy. It was my passion. It was years of my life. Do you understand? And you just threw it away without a second thought, without even asking. How can you stand there and say it's just stuff when you know how much it meant to me? Her face hardened. Well, maybe you care too much about stuff, Mark. Maybe it's a good thing. Now you can focus on real life, on us, on our future, instead of hoarding dusty old papers. The words hung in the air, a poisonous miasma. My future with her, she saw this as an opportunity, a cleansing. I saw it as an execution. Chasm between us suddenly felt wider than the Grand Canyon, deeper than the Mariana Trench. There was no bridge across it. There was no understanding. I turned away from her, unable to look at her face anymore, unable to comprehend the woman standing before me. My eyes scanned the empty garage again, the desolate space where my dreams once resided. The silence felt deafening, filled only with the echo of her casual dismissal. Over $100,000. Gone. Not stolen, not lost in a fire, but intentionally, mindlessly, discarded by the person who was supposed to be my partner. The pain was beyond description. It was a physical ache in my chest, a hollowness in my gut. This wasn't just a fight. This was something irreparable. I knew with sickening clarity that our life together would never be the same. The trust was shattered. And a part of me, the part that truly loved her, died right there on that garage floor. The next few hours were a blur of raw, unadulterated grief. My body felt heavy, my movements sluggish, as if I was moving through thick mud. I wandered aimlessly first back to the garage, staring at the empty space, hoping against hope that some miracle had occurred, that the boxes would magically reappear. They didn't. Then I went to my office, to my computer, opening my meticulously updated spreadsheet of the collection. Each row, each entry, was a fresh stab to the heart. Amazing Fantasy number 15, reprint, high grade. Journey into Mystery number 83, low grade, but original. Incredible Hulk, number 181, signed by Stan Lee. The values, the notes, the memories attached to each one. Now, just meaningless data on a screen. Sarah eventually retreated to the living room, leaving me alone with my despair. I could hear her moving around, the mundane sounds of her daily routine, washing dishes, folding laundry, watching television. The normality of it was jarring, sickening. How could she just continue on, as if nothing had happened? As if she hadn't just obliterated a significant portion of our assets and my entire emotional well-being. I tried calling a few friends, but my voice kept breaking. How do you explain this? My wife just threw out over $100,000 worth of my property, my life's passion, because she thought it was junk. It sounded so absurd, so unbelievable even to my own ears. Who would believe it? And how could anyone truly understand the depth of this loss? It wasn't just money. It was identity. It was years of hunting, negotiating, saving, protecting. It was a connection to my childhood, to a simpler time. My best friend, Dave, picked up on the third ring. He knew about my collection, respected it, even occasionally helped me track down a rare issue. Mark, you sound terrible. What's wrong? I took a shaky breath, trying to compose myself. It's gone, Dave. All of it. Sarah threw it out. Silence on the other end. Then a hesitant question. What's gone? Your old baseball cards. No, Dave. The comics. The entire collection. Every single one. She put them out for the garbage truck this morning. They're gone. All of them. My voice cracked on the last word. Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, the disbelief. Mark. Number. She couldn't have. Not the Green Lantern, not the Spideys. All of it. She thought it was junk. She said it was clutter. She said I was hoarding dusty old papers. The words tasted like ash. Holy Mark. Oh my God. I am so sorry, man. I don't even know what to say. That's insane. Is she serious? Does she even know what she did? I told her it was over $100,000. She thinks I am exaggerating. She thinks I am being dramatic. She thinks it's just stuff. Dave let out a low whistle. Man, that's a level of disrespect I didn't think was possible. What are you going to do? I don't know, I admitted, a profound weariness settling over me. I don't know what to do. I feel like I just lost a family member. Worse, because this was deliberate. This was an act of something. I don't even know what to call it. We talked for a while longer, Dave offering what comfort he could, promising to come over, but I told him I just needed to be alone. I needed to process this. I needed to figure out how to breathe again. The afternoon passed in a haze. I found myself pacing the house, unable to sit still, unable to find any comfort. Every object, every piece of furniture reminded me of the life Sarah and I had built together. A life that now felt like a lie. How could I have been so wrong about her? How could I have trusted her with something so precious, only for her to discard it without a second thought? Later, I heard Sarah preparing dinner. The smell of cooking food filled the air. A normal, everyday scent that felt utterly alien in my shattered world. She called me for dinner, her voice subdued, lacking its earlier cheerfulness. She probably realized the gravity of the situation was starting to sink in for her, even if she still refused to acknowledge the true value of what she had done. I went to the table, but I couldn't eat. The food tasted like ash. We sat in silence, a heavy, suffocating silence. It was the silence of a chasm that had opened up between us, a silent scream of betrayal and incomprehension. She tried to make small talk about her day, about work, about anything other than the gaping hole in my life. I just stared at my plate, unable to meet her gaze. Finally, she broke the silence in a way that only made it worse. "Look, Mark," she said, her voice attempting a conciliatory tone, but laced with a hint of accusation. "I know you are upset, but we can't dwell on this. It's done. It's just money, right? We'll make more. We have each other. Isn't that what matters?" I slowly raised my head, looking at her across the table. Her eyes, usually full of love, now seemed to hold a mixture of defensiveness and of faint irritation, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Just money," I repeated, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You think this is just money, Sarah? This wasn't just money. This was years of my life. This was my escape, my hobby, my passion. This was something I poured my heart and soul into. And you just annihilated it. Without a thought, without asking. And now you want me to just move on because we have each other. How can we have each other when you have so little respect for who I am?" Her eyes flashed, and the defensive wall went back up. "Respect? I respect you, Mark. I just don't respect your obsession with dusty old comics that take up half the garage and that you never even look at. Maybe this is a wake-up call for you to live in the real world." I pushed my chair back, the scraping sound loud in the silent room. I couldn't do this. Not now, not ever, maybe. I stood up, walked away from the untouched food, and went to our bedroom, closing the door behind me. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The image of those empty, long boxes burned into my mind. The grief was so profound, it felt physical. It wasn't just the loss of the comics, it was the loss of trust, the loss of understanding, the loss of the future I thought we had. My heart was truly broken. The night was long and restless. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the empty space in the garage. The image burned into my eyelids. I saw the garbage truck, its mechanical jaws chewing up my history. I saw Sarah's face, initially cheerful, then defensive, then just exasperated. I replayed our conversation, dissecting every word, searching for a sign I missed, a clue that could have prevented this catastrophe. There was none. She simply didn't understand, and perhaps, after this, she never would. My mind drifted back to a time before Sarah, before the house, before the adult responsibilities. It went back to my childhood, to the very beginning of this journey. I was 8 years old when my dad took me to my first comic book store. It wasn't one of those big, shiny shops you see today. It was a cluttered, dusty hole in the wall, smelling of old paper and ambition. I remembered walking in, my eyes wide with wonder, seeing the vibrant covers, the incredible artwork. My dad bought me a copy of an old Superman comic, a beat-up copy he found in a dollar bin. That was it. I was hooked. From then on, every allowance, every birthday money, every spare dollar went into comics. I learned to read faster, just so I could devour the stories. I learned about art, about storytelling, about heroes and villains, about good and evil, about hope and despair. My room became a shrine to my growing collection. My parents, bless their hearts, never fully understood it, but they encouraged my passion, seeing it as a harmless hobby that kept me out of trouble. As I got older, the hobby evolved. It wasn't just about reading the stories anymore. It became about the hunt. The thrill of finding that rare issue, that key appearance, that variant cover you'd been searching for. I learned about grading, about the nuances of condition. I spent hours poring over price guides, learning the market, understanding the rarity of certain books. It wasn't just collecting, it was an education. I met other collectors, made friends at comic conventions. It was a community, a shared passion. The Green Lantern number 76, the one I mentioned to Sarah, was a prime example. I found it tucked away in a dusty bin at a small convention 10 years ago. It was ungraded, looked a little rough around the edges, but I had a feeling. I paid $50 for it. $50. A week later, I sent it off to a professional grading company. When it came back, an impressive 8.5, I nearly fainted. The market had exploded for that particular issue because of a new movie announcement. That one comic alone was suddenly worth $20,000. That was when I started taking the valuation seriously. That was when I started to see my collection not just as a hobby, but as a significant asset. I remembered showing Sarah the appraisal, bubbling with excitement. "Look, honey, this is our future. This is real money." She had smiled, patted my arm and said, "That's nice, dear," before changing the subject to what we were having for dinner. I always brushed it off, thinking she just didn't grasp the scale. I told myself she was just being modest, or maybe a little intimidated by such a large number. I thought she trusted me to handle it. I thought she understood that even if she didn't share the passion, she respected mine. I thought wrong. My collection wasn't just a pile of books. It was a tangible representation of my growth, my interests, my dedication. It chronicled my life through the decades, from my childhood wonders to my teenage obsessions, to the careful, calculated acquisitions of my adult life. Each box, each comic, held a piece of me. The hours I spent reading, researching, organizing. The joy of a new acquisition, the satisfaction of completing a run. It was all woven into the fabric of who I was. When Sarah and I started dating, she always teased me about the funny books. But it was always light-hearted, affectionate teasing. She never once expressed true disdain. She had listened patiently when I talked about a new acquisition or a particularly good story. She even came to a few conventions with me, enduring the crowds and the smells, smiling as I excitedly pointed out a rare variant or met an artist. I thought she was tolerant, even supportive in her own way. Now, lying in this bed, consumed by a hollow emptiness, I realized I had fundamentally misunderstood her. Her tolerance was conditional. Her support was superficial. The moment my passion became an inconvenience, something that took up space or didn't fit into her definition of useful, it was disposable. My life's work, my financial safety net, my identity, all of it was just junk in her eyes. The sun started to peek through the curtains, casting long, pale shadows across the room. A new day. But it didn't feel new. It felt like the end of something. The end of my collection, the end of my financial security, and perhaps the end of my marriage. The thought was terrifying, but also strangely inevitable. How do you come back from this? How do you look at the person who knowingly or unknowingly, carelessly or deliberately, destroyed something so vital to you and still see a future? The image of her casual shrug, her dismissive smile, replayed in my mind. The pain was fresh, raw, and unrelenting. This was more than a loss. It was a wound that cut deep, severing ties I thought were unbreakable. My heart felt like a crumpled comic book, its value gone, its story torn to shreds. The days that followed were a blur of muted colors and heavy silence. I felt like a ghost haunting my own home. Sarah tried to act normal, almost aggressively so. She would make breakfast, talk about her day, suggest activities. The elephant in the room wasn't just in the room, it was the whole damn house. I, on the other hand, couldn't pretend. The joy had been siphoned out of me. Every corner of the house felt empty, even the ones not directly affected by the purge. The weight of the financial loss was crushing. We weren't wealthy by any stretch. We had decent jobs, but we lived paycheck to paycheck like most people. That $100,000 wasn't just some abstract number. It was real, tangible security. I had planned to use a portion of that collection to fund a down payment on a bigger house. We'd been talking about upgrading, maybe starting a family. That money would have made it possible to get a better mortgage rate, to have a safety net for any unexpected expenses. It was the nest egg, the foundation for our future. Now the nest was empty, and the foundation had crumbled. I remember one conversation in particular a few months ago. Sarah was worried about her job security. The company she worked for was going through some restructuring. I remembered putting my arm around her, reassuring her. "Don't worry," I'd said. "Even if things get tough, we have the comics. We can always sell a few if we need a buffer. It's like our own personal emergency fund." She had smiled then, a genuine smile, and leaned into my embrace. She had known, she had seen it as a safety net, and now she had shredded it. I spent hours poring over my spreadsheets, calculating the precise value of what was lost. I even called a few appraisers I knew, just to get their shocked reactions, to hear them confirm the catastrophic scale of the loss. Their gasps, their exclamations of, "Oh my God, Mark, I'm so sorry," were cold comfort, but at least they validated my pain. They understood. They knew this wasn't just stuff. I even briefly considered contacting a lawyer. Could I sue her? For destruction of property? For gross negligence? The thought felt sickening. This was my wife. The idea of taking legal action against her felt like cutting off my own limb. But the thought was there, a desperate measure born from the depth of my despair. I consulted with a friend who was a paralegal. He listened patiently, then sighed. "Mark, technically, yes, you probably have a case. But it's your wife. In a divorce, assets are usually split. In a situation like this, it would be extremely messy. It would essentially be the end of your marriage, if it isn't already." His words hit me hard. The end of my marriage. It felt like it already was. The trust was gone. How do you trust someone who can unilaterally decide to destroy something so profoundly important to you? Someone who, even after being told the true value, still downplays your grief. I started avoiding her. I ate meals in silence, or not at all. I stayed up late, staring at the ceiling, or went for long aimless drives. The house, which once felt like a haven, now felt like a cage. Every time I saw her, I saw the destruction she had wrought. I saw the empty space in the garage. I saw the thousands of dollars, the years of my life, swirling in a landfill. One evening, as I was trying to cook something, anything, to distract myself, Sarah came into the kitchen. "Mark," she said, her voice soft, tentative. "Can we talk? Please? This silence is killing me." I turned, spatula in hand, my face probably blank. "What's there to talk about, Sarah? You threw away over $100,000 of my property. You destroyed something I cherished. What conversation do you think we can possibly have that makes that okay?" She wrung her hands. I know, and I am sorry. I truly am. I didn't realize how much they were worth. I swear. I feel terrible, Mark. I really do." Her apology felt hollow. It felt like she was sorry for the monetary loss. Not for the betrayal, not for the disrespect, not for the emotional damage. "You didn't realize?" I scoffed. "I told you over and over again, I showed you. You just didn't care enough to listen." or you chose to ignore it, which is worse. I heard you, but I didn't believe it. It sounds crazy, right? Old comic books being worth that much. I thought you were just dreaming, or that it was something you just said to keep them. Her voice grew defensive again. And honestly, you were never going to sell them anyway. They just sat there. At some point, something has to give, Mark. We need that space. We need to declutter. It was getting out of hand. So you took it upon yourself to make that decision for me? Without my input, without my consent. My voice was rising again. That's not a partnership, Sarah. That's a dictatorship. You decided what was valuable in our shared life and what was not. And you acted on it without a shred of respect for my wishes or my property. She threw her hands up. Well, what do you want from me, Mark? I can't magically get them back. They're gone. Do you want me to beg? Do you want me to grovel? Do you want me to pay you back? Because, you know, we don't have that kind of money just lying around. No, I said, my voice quiet now, dangerously so. I want you to understand. I want you to feel the weight of what you've done. I want you to truly regret it. Not just for the money, but for what you broke between us. And I don't know if you ever will. I turned back to the stove, stirring the contents of the pan. The conversation was over. The chasm remained. The financial blow was devastating, but the blow to my spirit, to my trust, to my sense of partnership, felt infinitely worse. This wasn't just about money. It was about everything, and I couldn't see a way forward. The strain on our marriage became a palpable entity in the house, a suffocating presence that filled every room. It hung in the air during our silent meals, in the empty spaces in the garage, in the separate corners of the couch we now instinctively occupied. Casual touches, the shared laughter, the small intimacies that formed the bedrock of a relationship, they were all gone, replaced by a cold, uncomfortable silence, punctuated by occasional short-fused arguments. Sarah tried, in her own way, to bridge the gap. She'd leave little notes, try to initiate conversations about mundane topics, even suggest a date night. But every gesture felt hollow. Every attempt to return to normalcy felt like a betrayal of my own grief. How could I go on a date night when I felt like I was attending the funeral of my life's work? How could I laugh when my soul was still bleeding? The arguments, when they did erupt, were vicious. They started about the comics, always about the comics, but quickly spiraled into accusations about deeper, long-standing issues. You never listen to me, I'd yell. You always dismiss my feelings. And she'd retort, and you are always so wrapped up in your hobbies. You never pay attention to our real life. You prioritize those dusty books over me. Those dusty books were part of our future. I'd fire back, the words burning my throat. They were for us, and you threw them away without a thought. Because you hoard everything, because you can't let go of anything. I was trying to help you, to help us. She would cry, tears of frustration streaming down her face. But even her tears felt like they were for her own distress, not for mine. The lack of genuine remorse for the emotional impact of her actions was what truly broke me. She was sorry for the mistake of the monetary value, but not for the deliberate act of disrespect, not for the violation of trust. She still fundamentally saw it as a good thing that I was forced to let go of my hoarding. I started sleeping in the guest room. The marital bed, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield. The unspoken words, the unresolved anger, created an invisible wall between us. Couldn't bear to lie next to her, to feel her warmth, knowing what she had done, knowing she still didn't fully grasp the magnitude of it. Friends noticed. Family members called, asking if everything was okay. We put on a brave face in public, a thin veneer of normalcy, but the cracks were starting to show. My mom asked, "Mark, is everything all right with Sarah? You both seem so distant." I just mumbled something about stress at work, knowing I couldn't burden her with the truth. How could I tell my own mother that her daughter-in-law had just destroyed a quarter of my life savings and my heart in the process? I found myself retreating further and further into myself. My work suffered. I lost concentration easily, staring blankly at my computer screen, my mind replaying the garage scene. I stopped going to my usual coffee shop, avoided places where I might run into people. I just wanted to disappear. One evening, Sarah found me in the guest room, packing a small bag. My intention wasn't to leave permanently, just to get some space, to clear my head, to breathe without the suffocating presence of our broken marriage. "Mark, what are you doing?" Her voice was tight with apprehension. I looked at her, my eyes devoid of emotion. "I need some time, Sarah. I can't be here right now. I need space to think, to grieve. Grieve." She stepped into the room, her voice rising. "Grieve what, Mark? They were just comics. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can talk this through." "Just comics," I repeated, my voice hollow. It was over $100,000. It was my passion. It was a part of who I am, and you destroyed it. You destroyed me, and you still don't understand the depth of that destruction. How do we fix something when you don't even acknowledge the wound? She started to cry, real tears this time, but they felt like tears of frustration, of feeling unfairly accused, not of true sorrow for what she had done to me. I said, "I am sorry, Mark. What else do you want me to do? I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to organize. I thought I was helping. This is unfair. Unfair. Unfair." My voice was sharp, cutting through her protests. "You think this is unfair to you? Sarah, I wake up every morning feeling like I've been gut-punched. I see the empty space where my dreams used to be. I feel the weight of our ruined future. And you think I am being unfair for needing space?" I zipped up my bag. "I don't know if we can fix this, Sarah. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. The trust is gone, the respect is gone, and I don't know how to get it back." I walked past her, the silence of the house pressing down on us. She didn't try to stop me. She just stood there, crying softly, her shoulders shaking. As I drove away, leaving our house behind, I felt a strange mix of profound sadness and a tiny flicker of relief. The distance, even if just for a few days, felt like a desperate necessity. But as I watched the house shrink in my rearview mirror, I knew, deep down, that this wasn't just a temporary separation. This was the beginning of the end. The destruction of the comics had cracked the foundation of our marriage, and now the whole structure was crumbling. I drove to Dave's place, my best friend. He had offered his spare room, a refuge from the suffocating atmosphere of my own home. When I pulled up, his porch light was on, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. He met me at the door, his face etched with concern. He didn't say much, just clapped me on the shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the raw pain that radiated from me. His apartment, usually a hive of activity, was quiet. He offered me a beer which I barely tasted, and let me collapse onto his sofa. I rambled, retelling the story, though he'd heard most of it already. I spoke about the specific issues, the ones I knew for sure were gone, the ones that represented the biggest chunks of value. The Green Lantern, the Hulk, the Amazing Fantasy reprint. Each name a fresh wound. "Dude," Dave said quietly, when I finally ran out of steam, "I know it hurts. I can't even imagine. But you gotta find a way to deal with this, man. This is eating you alive." "How?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "How do you deal with something like this? It's not just stuff, Dave. It's everything. It's a betrayal, he nodded. I know. It's a massive betrayal, and it's a huge financial hit. Maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist, or even just a support group. There are online forums for collectors who've lost their collections, right? Like after a fire or a flood. The idea of a support group for people whose wives threw out their collections seemed absurd, yet strangely comforting. There had to be others, right? People who understood this specific unique brand of heartbreak. I spent the next few days holed up in Dave's apartment, living on his couch, endlessly scrolling through online forums. I found a few threads, mostly for collectors who had suffered losses due to natural disasters or theft. The stories were heartbreaking, but there was a common thread of empathy, of shared understanding, for the passion, for the value, for the irreplaceable nature of their lost treasures. I even posted my own story, anonymously on a popular comic book forum. I kept it brief, just the bare facts. Wife threw out entire $100 comic collection during spring cleaning. Thought it was junk. Devastated. The replies poured in, a torrent of outrage and sympathy. NTA, not the asshole, was the overwhelming consensus. Red flags, divorce her immediately. She did this on purpose to control you. That's not a wife. That's a vandal. The sheer volume of support of people validating my feelings, calling out Sarah's actions for what they were, destructive, disrespectful, unforgivable, was both a strange comfort and a reaffirmation of the impossible situation I was in. But even with the validation, the hollowness remained. Reading other people's stories of loss, even if they were from different circumstances, just reminded me of my own. I tried to distract myself. Dave took me to a baseball game, tried to get me to play video games, suggested we go to a local comic shop just to browse, just to be around the familiar smell of paper and ink. But every attempt was futile. At the comic shop, I walked through the aisles, past the vibrant new releases, the carefully preserved back issues. I saw a copy of a relatively common X-Men issue, one that I had a pristine copy of, now gone. A wave of nausea washed over me. I had to leave. The very thing that used to bring me joy now brought me only pain. A sharp, constant reminder of what I had lost. I knew intellectually that I needed to find a way to cope, to move on. But emotionally, I was paralyzed. It wasn't just the comics, it was the principle. It was the knowledge that someone I loved and trusted could so casually disregard something so central to my being. It was the feeling of being utterly misunderstood, of having my deepest passion dismissed as hoarding or junk. Sarah called Dave's phone almost daily. He would hand it to me, a sympathetic grimace on his face. I rarely answered. When I did, our conversations were strained, circular. She would apologize again, but her apologies always felt conditional, always came with an implied, "but you were difficult too." She still couldn't truly grasp the depth of the wound she had inflicted. She wanted forgiveness, but without truly understanding what she was being asked to forgive. "I miss you, Mark," she said on one call, her voice sounding genuinely sad. "Can't we just talk? Please come home, we can figure this out." "I don't know what there is to figure out, Sarah," I replied, my voice flat. "You destroyed a part of me. You threw away our future. How do we come back from that? How do I trust you again?" "I'll buy you new ones," she offered, desperate. "We can start a new collection. Maybe not the same ones, but," I laughed, a humorless, bitter sound. "Buy me new ones?" "Sarah, you can't buy back history. You can't replace a lifetime of collecting. You can't replace the feeling of finding that one rare issue after years of searching. You don't understand." And that's the problem. I hung up the phone feeling heavy in my hand. It wasn't just the comics. It was the constant, gnawing realization that the woman I loved, the one I had shared my life with, was fundamentally incapable of understanding me on this most profound level. And if she couldn't understand this, what else about me did she dismiss as junk? What else about our shared life was conditional on her approval, her convenience? The solace I sought in others' understanding only highlighted the lack of it where it mattered most: at home. The broken trust was a gaping wound, refusing to heal, refusing to let me move on. The days away from Sarah provided a kind of clarity, albeit a painful one. The initial shock had given way to a deep, simmering anger, and then to a profound sadness. I started to see our relationship not just through the lens of the comic collection, but through a wider, more disturbing perspective. Comics were a symptom, a tragic manifestation of a deeper issue. It wasn't just that she threw them out, it was that she did it without consulting me, without considering the profound impact it would have. It was the casual disrespect for my property, for my passion, for my emotional well-being. This wasn't the first time she had made unilateral decisions, but it was by far the most devastating. I remembered other instances. The time she decided to repaint my office without asking, choosing a color I hated, just because she thought it brightened the space. Time she donated a box of my old college textbooks, assuming I wouldn't need them, even though some were sentimental. These were minor things, easily forgiven, brushed aside as her quirky personality. But now, they seemed like warning signs I had willfully ignored. Little chips at the foundation, leading up to the final, shattering blow. The core of our relationship was trust, and it was shattered. How could I trust her with anything significant again? How could I share my dreams, my vulnerabilities, my passions, knowing that at any moment she might decide they were clutter and discard them? I pictured her face in my mind, the one she made when I first told her the value. That brief flicker of horror, quickly replaced by a stubborn defensiveness. She wasn't horrified by my pain. She was horrified by the mistake she had made, the monetary value she had discarded. There was no genuine empathy for my heartbreak. It was about her feeling bad for an error, not about her feeling bad for hurting me. I started to question everything about our marriage. Was it truly a partnership? Or had I simply been too passive, too willing to let her lead, to ignore the small infringements on my boundaries? Had I enabled this catastrophic act by not asserting myself enough about the comics in the first place? No, that was unfair. I had told her. I had shown her. She simply chose not to believe me or to care. Thought of divorce, which had been a fleeting, painful whisper, now became a loud, insistent scream in my head. Could I live with this? Could I ever truly forgive her? Even if I did, would the trust ever be rebuilt? The answer, a cold, hard knot in my stomach, was no, I couldn't. The image of those empty long boxes, the symbol of everything I had lost, would forever stand between us. I thought about what Sarah had said. Just comics. Her words sliced through me. It wasn't just comics. It was about how she saw my inner world, my unique interests. She dismissed them as frivolous, as childhood toys, as hoarding. It meant she didn't truly see me, the whole me. She saw a version of me that fit into her neat, organized world. And anything that didn't fit, she simply removed. My internal monologue was relentless, cycling through anger, grief, and a profound sense of disillusionment. I thought about the vows we made, for better or worse. This was definitely worse. But was worse supposed to include intentional destruction of property and emotional disregard? I don't think so. I called a therapist, something Dave had urged me to do. The first session was a torrent of pent-up emotion. I spoke for an hour, uninterrupted, about the comics, the value, the history, the betrayal, the shattered trust. The therapist listened patiently, occasionally asking a clarifying question. "And how does this make you feel about your wife?" she finally asked, her voice calm. "Empty," I said, the word heavy with meaning. "Betrayed, disrespected, like she doesn't know me, like she doesn't care. Like our entire relationship was built on a lie, where her priorities always trumped mine, even to the point of destroying my property." "Do you see a path forward for the marriage?" she pressed gently. I closed my eyes, picturing Sarah's face again, not the one she made when she realized the monetary value, but the one she made when she was defensive, when she accused me of hoarding, when she dismissed my pain. "I don't know how to live with someone who could do this," I confessed, my voice raw. "I don't know how to trust her again. Every time I look at her, I see the empty garage. I see what she took from me, and I don't think I can ever unsee it." Truth was, the love I once felt for her was now buried under layers of resentment and a profound sense of loss. It wasn't just the comics. It was the fundamental breach of trust, the casual annihilation of something so precious to me, the dismissal of my very identity. It was the realization that our partnership was, in her eyes, never truly equal. The marriage, like my collection, felt irrevocably broken. After a week at Dave's, I knew I couldn't stay away forever. But I also knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. I needed to face Sarah, not to reconcile, but to articulate the depth of the damage, and to figure out what, if anything, could be salvaged from the wreckage of our life together. Thought of it filled me with dread, a mixture of anxiety and a cold resolve. I called her and told her I was coming home. Her voice on the phone was hopeful, almost desperate. "Oh, Mark, thank goodness, I've been so worried. Please, let's talk. We can fix this, I know it." Her optimism felt like a slap in the face. When I walked through the door, the house felt different. It was cleaner. Yes, almost sterile, the way it had been before my boxes were there. But it was also colder, filled with an absence that was louder than any presence. Sarah was waiting for me in the living room, her eyes red-rimmed, her posture tense. "Mark," she began, her voice trembling, "I'm so glad you are back. Please, let's just talk this through. I know I messed up. I truly regret what I did." "Do you?" I asked, my voice flat. I sat on the opposite couch, leaving a vast emotional distance between us. "Do you regret it, Sarah? Or do you just regret the financial consequences?" Her face crumpled. "Of course I regret it, all of it. I hate seeing you like this, Mark. I hate what this has done to us. I miss you. I miss us. Missing me is not the same as understanding the depth of your actions," I said, my voice unwavering. "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't just about money. It's about respect. It's about trust. It's about how you dismissed something that was not only valuable, but integral to my identity. You saw it as clutter. You saw it as junk. And you threw it away without a second thought. That tells me what you truly think of my passions, of my priorities, of me." "That's not fair," she cried. "I love you, Mark. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to organize. You never did anything with them. They were just sitting there. They were sitting there because they were carefully stored, waiting for the right time, waiting for our plans to materialize." I retorted, my voice rising. "They were there for our future. They were our safety net. And you unilaterally decided they were worthless. How can I ever trust you again, Sarah? With money? With my possessions? with my feelings. How do I know you won't just decide something else is junk and throw it away? She stood up, pacing the room, wringing her hands. I promise I won't. I swear I'll never touch anything of yours again without asking. I'll get rid of all my clutter. I'll do anything. Please, Mark, just don't give up on us. It's not about clutter, Sarah. It's about you believing that you have the right to define what is important in our lives and discard what you deem unimportant. It's about a fundamental disrespect for my autonomy. You didn't ask. You just did it. And even now, you still blame me for hoarding or for not doing anything with them. You still minimize my grief. We argued for hours, going around in circles. Each word a painful reminder of the chasm between us. She wanted to fix it by saying she was sorry for the mistake and promising not to do it again. I wanted her to understand the profound betrayal, the deep violation of my trust and my identity. She couldn't give me that because she couldn't see it. In her mind, she had made a mistake, a big one. But it was just a mistake, and we should just move past. For me, it was an act of destruction that had revealed a fundamental flaw in our relation. I think we need to separate, Sarah, I finally said. The words tasting like ash in my mouth but feeling true. Permanently. I don't see a way past this. I can't live with this constant reminder, this constant doubt. The trust is gone, and without trust, here is no marriage. Her face went white. No, Mark, please don't say that. We can go to counseling, we can work through this. We've built a life together. We built a life, yes, I agreed, my voice devoid of emotion. But you just took a wrecking ball to it. And I don't think I have the strength or the will to rebuild it with you. Not when I know you are capable of something like this. I saw the realization dawning in her eyes. It wasn't just about the comics anymore. It was about the end of everything. Her pleas became more desperate, but they fell on deaf ears. My heart was a stone. The grief for the comics had morphed into a profound grief for the marriage itself. A relationship I once cherished, now shattered beyond repair. There was no going back. The path forward was clear, albeit painful, a life without her. The days that followed were the hardest of my life. A slow, agonizing unraveling of a decade-long partnership. The decision was made. Sarah moved out, initially to a friend's place, then to a small apartment she found. The silence in the house grew deeper, more profound. It was no longer filled with unspoken anger. It was just empty. Utterly, completely empty. I started the divorce proceedings. It was amicable, as much as a divorce could be after such a catastrophic event. She didn't fight me on anything. She knew she was in the wrong, even if she still couldn't fully comprehend the depth of my pain. The lawyers handled the division of assets, the logistics. It felt surreal, like watching a movie of my own life. The house, once filled with the warmth of our shared history, now felt like a mausoleum. I started packing up her things, methodically, dispassionately. Each item was a memory, a reminder of what we had and what was now lost. I found myself staring at her toothbrush, her favorite mug, a small photo album of our wedding day. A wave of sadness, deep and pervasive, washed over me. It wasn't just the anger anymore, it was the profound sorrow for the life that was and the life that could have been. I walked into the garage, the scene of the crime. The space was still empty. No long boxes. No comics. Just the cold concrete floor, reflecting the faint light from the window. I sat down, cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by the ghosts of my collection. I remembered picking up each issue. The excitement, the anticipation, the joy. I remembered bringing them home, carefully bagging and boarding them, placing them in their designated boxes. All that effort, all that love, all that love, all that love, all that value, reduced to landfill. It wasn't just the monetary loss, though that was immense and tangible. It was the feeling of being stripped bare, of having a fundamental part of my identity carelessly discarded. It was the knowledge that the person who was supposed to be my safe harbor had instead unleashed a storm that destroyed everything. I knew Sarah still didn't truly understand. She was sorry for the mistake, for the misunderstanding of the value. But she wasn't sorry for the intentional act of purging my passions, for the disrespect, for the casual disregard. And that was the ultimate heartbreak. It wasn't malice, perhaps, but a profound lack of empathy, a fundamental difference in how we viewed the world and each other. The divorce finalized a few months later. A simple exchange of papers, a handshake with the lawyers. It was over, just like that. The marriage, like the comics, was gone. Life slowly, painfully began to reconfigure itself. I started seeing the therapist regularly, working through the layers of grief and anger. She helped me understand that while I couldn't control Sarah's actions, I could control my reaction and my path forward. She helped me grieve not just the comics, but the marriage, the trust, the future I had envisioned. I still went to comic shops, but now I approached them differently. I bought a few new issues, mostly to support the local business, but the thrill was gone. The hunt felt meaningless. The joy of collecting, for now, seemed to have evaporated. Maybe one day it would come back. Maybe I would rebuild, slowly, carefully, one comic at a time, but it would never be the same. The empty space in the garage would always be there, a stark reminder of what was lost. My friends rallied around me, their support a quiet comfort. Dave was a rock, always there for a beer, a listening ear, or just to sit in comfortable silence. They knew not to bring up the comics unless I did. They understood the wound was still raw. The house felt too big, too empty. I put it on the market. I needed a fresh start, a new space, untainted by the ghosts of what had been. I knew it would be a long, arduous journey. Rebuilding my finances would take years, if it was even possible to recoup such a devastating loss. Rebuilding my trust in another person in a relationship would take even longer, perhaps a lifetime. I often thought about Sarah. I didn't hate her. The anger had subsided, replaced by a deep sadness, a quiet resignation. I hoped she found peace, that she learned from her actions. But for me, the damage was done. The junk comic collection, my precious treasure, was gone. And with it, so was a part of me, a part of our life, and a piece of my heart that would forever remain broken. The story of my life, like a prized comic book, had been torn, irrevocably damaged, and now it was time to try and write a new chapter alone.